Which one?
The relocation of District 9.
Yeah, I've already got it.
Oh, your mic's on.
Three, two. Good evening and welcome, everybody. It is Tuesday, December 10th, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. and with a quorum present, I'll call this meeting of the Common Council of the City of Wausau to order. We will begin tonight's proceedings with all of us reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please press yes to indicate your presence. All 11 members are present.
And we have several people that would like to speak on some matters tonight. The one thing that I ask, something I've been very proud of since I've been mayor here in Wausau, and really we're one of the few cities in Wisconsin that allows us to let public comment be known, because I really do believe in everybody having a right to say what they wish and also to be heard. But I ask that people be respectful, decent, professional, and dare I say nice. So, first up, please. You will have 3 minutes, and if you could, when you come forward, please announce your name and address for the record. First up, please, would be Colin Tucker. Or Colin, I'm sorry if I said it wrong.
This one, Colin. Hi, my name's Colin Tucker. I live at 915 Scott Street in Wausau, Wisconsin, right up the road. And I am here to talk about section 10.20.030, the prohibiting of overnight parking in the wintertime. I believe this is it is unfair to the citizens of Wausau, and it's completely poorly timed to institute this ordinance during the winter when we're already in the midst of, if you look out the window right now, could have been technically a few snow emergencies already. I understand that plowing the street and street cleaning is an issue, but citizens need time to make these new arrangements in order to comply to the law, and you can't expect us. There's been one Wausau Herald article about this. Otherwise, if you aren't keeping up with local government, you would have never known about this. And I'm a new homeowner. I'm new to Wausau. It's been less than a year. And
Welcome.
thank you. I appreciate that. And I contemplated, getting a four-wheel drive car. I live on Scott Street, which is a very steep grade. I do have a garage, a three-car garage that I can only access through the alley, and I know that is not maintained by the city. Therefore, I resort to having to park on the street and alternating sides, just like everyone else in the community. But if I would have known about this, say, come May of earlier this year, I would have been able to or contract an employer to plow, to do what I had to do in order to comply to the city ordinance. I understand the problem that you guys have with alternating street parking and people not complying and snow emergencies, especially when I came here last winter. I realized it firsthand how crazy it can get, how much snow and how much that impacts, the transportation system here in town. But I think that, and I don't know if I'm going to say this right, Tao and McElhenney?
McElhaney.
Thank you, sorry, all right, I'll get a pass, call me Colin. I think they're right in the dissenting votes on November 14th when that happened, when this was first brought up to the council. And I think this needs to be, how Tao elegantly put it, is it needs to be brought to the community's attention, and we have to have time to prepare. It's not the time in the middle of winter to all of a sudden impose a new restrictive parking ordinance that we no longer, or that we can't comply to, or we can't change our situation when it's already here. So there's no reason. It's been 10 years, I know, of an experiment, according to Rasmussen, and this is nothing new, but it is new to me. I was under the impression when I bought this house that I would be able to at least park on the street in the wintertime, be able to use my garage in the summer and whatnot. I know I was aware that the city doesn't plow the alleys and doesn't do that, so I was prepared. I had a contingency plan, but now that has gone down the drain because of an experiment for 10 years that all of a sudden, in the middle of winter, we're going to decide to change the law in general. So just to sum up, I guess, the lack of preparation and foresight by the city should not be alleviated by the citizens. If the city wants to prohibit the wintertime parking to facilitate better street maintenance, I'm all for that, but allow us time to prepare.
Thank you, sir. Next up, Ms. Christine Psalm Little, please. Welcome.
Hi. Christine Little, 3312 North 11th Street, Wausau, Wisconsin. I'm here to talk about some of the racially charged issues we had at the last meeting. And I'd just like to say a few words. I am an educator in the community, and I've taught diversity to students for many years. And I don't believe that people of color in this community should have to fight to be included and respected. White people in this community need to call out their other white people for their racism, especially our leaders, and that's all of you. You should know better, and you are required to know better as representatives of this community. I really feel if you had reacted to the comments Ms. Lawrence made at the last meeting as swiftly and effectively as you reacted to the snowball throwing ordinance issue, people of color in this community might feel safe and feel like they have a chance to see some real change happen. I had the opportunity to talk to 3 council members, and I asked them to take some action. It doesn't appear that Ms. Lawrence is going to resign. It doesn't appear that, I haven't heard anything, I haven't seen any letter of apology, anything like that. In fact, I think you may be running for your seat. I think you took papers out to run for your seat. I challenged 3 people and asked them to make some changes. It's not okay for a leader in our community to make comments like that with no accountability. And I expect you to do that. I'm calling you out. You know better, you need to do better. One of the members, I think, confronted the issue. The other council member suggested I create a survey and send it around to, for all of you to get some idea about what your constituents feel about the situation from last week and from 2003 or 15 years ago. So we did create a survey and we sent that around, and I will be prepared to present those results to you probably at the next meeting. But you shouldn't need a survey to tell you that it's inappropriate for a council member to speak that way. You shouldn't need a survey to tell you that. You know better. You're all adults. You're all professionals. If you don't know better, one implicit bias class is not going to help you. You need to do some real work. And we as a community want to see you do that work. I'm going to hold you all accountable. When I get a bone, I don't let go. And I'm embarrassed by some of the things that are happening in central Wisconsin. We're the most racist, one of the most racist states in the nation, most segregated. In 2018, the health department declared Wisconsin, that racism in Wisconsin was a public health issue. That's a problem. I'm holding you accountable. I'm calling you out. You aren't going to, this isn't going to pass. I don't know what the mayor did. I don't know if you did anything. I do know that Ms. Lawrence was passing around nomination papers for you. Maybe that's her atonement, her act of atonement for, I don't know. But it doesn't sound like you confronted her at all. That's not okay. And this community is not going to stand for it. And white people like me are calling white people like you out because you know better. I've heard some crazy things come out of your mouths in the last year. I haven't lived here in many years, and I'm embarrassed. And I will not hesitate to bring some publicity onto this community if shame is going to make you change your ways. It shouldn't take that. Ms. Lawrence, you had 15 years to learn to do better. And then you had an opportunity to apologize, and you didn't do better. I'm not that forgiving. a change needs to be made, and it's up to every one of you. There's no excuse. So I want to know, and I will follow up with every one of you, what you're going to do, because this will not stand. There needs to be accountability for our leaders, and this community is going to hold you accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Chris Norfleet.
How you doing? My name is Chris Norfleet. I live at 719 Bertha Street, Wausau, Wisconsin, 54403. I think that's my zip code. Well, you know, we're back here, and the first thing I want you to understand is that I want to read you something from your Constitution. That was written before I was a free man, before I was seen as a human being or equitable. It says, your Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of my speech or of the press. Listen to this clearly. You have no right to prevent peaceable assembly. You have no right to reject my petition for a grievance to you as my government. And let's be clear what the word redress means. To set it straight. To make that which is right wrong. I mean, wrong right. To undo what you've done. Redress means you do not get to just sweep it under the rug. We could be here about Lisa Lawrence, but I believe I made it extremely clear that the overwhelming problem is not Lisa or this council person being here. It's the accountability that nobody held you to. It's that nobody walked to you and said, Lisa, have you changed your ways? Lisa, how are you going to endear yourself? Build a bond with this community. I have no problem with talking to you, but I'm going to make the same comment that I'll make on Facebook or wherever. You did have a council person on this here, and I'll say council person Tao, who recognized from the Ted Nugent incident to her incident and to other incidents in this community that if we don't start taking some kind of education on becoming in a more enlightened community, and not just to learn better, but to become effective and efficient at doing the better that you learn, there is no way that this is going to be the last time a black or brown person stand in front of you filled with disappointment, heartache, and hurt. You asked me to be decent, civil, and follow your rules. All we as black people have been asking America for 500 years is do the same.
Thank you. And Miss Becky McElhaney.
Thank you. My name is Becky McElhaney. I live at 4050 Ashland Avenue. I've taken the opportunity to speak to everyone because I'm not allowed to redress, and I want people to understand I'm not allowed to speak to public comment from that chair, okay? I'm speaking today as a resident of the city of Wausau, not just an alderperson, but as a lifelong resident. I have received numerous calls since the moment that Ms. Lawrence was appointed from residents in my district, some who were broken at those comments many years ago. I have a black man who was broken as a child by those comments. He lives in my district. We speak frequently. He's trying to do better. He wants better for our community. As we have talked about this, I have talked to others, and I believe we need to be better with diversity, period. We need to be better with race, gender, disability. We have had incidents in all of those areas. I have dealt in my district alone with people being called the R word or the N word. It has got to stop. People feel emboldened to use these type of words and derogatory language. Are we, as a council, giving them shelter? I don't know. But I am asking tonight that if every one of us, please think about starting somewhere. Formal diversity training. I want it for the leaders, for the city staff. Let's lead by example and do something, whatever it may be. But I don't know if we can stay quiet any longer because I don't think it's the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Also tonight, we have one presentation for the Boys and Girls Club update with Kim Larson. If you'd like to come forward, you and Peyton, so make your presentation. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having us back. When we spoke with the Finance Committee a couple of weeks ago, we shared some highlights, and I just wanted to get into some more specifics about the investment that the City of Wausau has made in the Boys and Girls Club. Between November 1st of 2018 and October 31st of 2019, 1,121 kids living in the Wausau area, the Wausau 54401 or 03 zip codes, participated in the Boys and Girls Club. Of those, the following numbers that I'm going to share are actual registered members of the Boys and Girls Club who sign into very specific programs throughout the club, but do not include the hundreds of kids that we impact throughout community engagement and other collaborations in our community. So in that year, about 30% of those 1,121 kids participated in our academic programming, or 413 unduplicated kids. 940 of them participated in our healthy lifestyle programming, or nearly 80% of those kids. 427 participated in good character, leadership, and career planning programming, again, about 30%. And 766 ate a nutritious meal in the evening, or on a non-school day, or a healthy snack during the day. We talked about outcomes at that meeting as well. 97% of our kids report that they learned to get along with people who are different from them at the Boys and Girls Club. 97% learned how to make a positive decision because of the programming at the club. 89% say the club helps them to learn to respond appropriately to bullying. And 83% learn healthy ways to cope with stress. 89% of those kids say the club helps them do better in school. And one of my personal favorites is that 96% of our kids have a positive relationship with a staff member or volunteer. But of those 1,121 kids, it's probably better for you to hear from one of them standing next to me.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Peyton Steffen, and I am a sophomore at Wausau East. I have been attending the Boys and Girls Club since I was in 5th grade. Since then, I have been offered an amazing opportunity to work as a staff member and impact the club members just as the staff did for me. The club has offered me so much more than giving me career-ready opportunities as a junior staff to a safe environment to hang out with my friends. The club has always offered me more than I can do anywhere else, and for that, I am grateful for all the activities, field trips, and free meals that are provided. My favorite thing to do at the club would be helping Jane in the kitchen prep and serve the meals for the members. Almost every day I learn something new from her when it comes to cooking or baking. I also enjoy being part of Keystone. That's a club within the club that contributes to making kids career ready. We do things like creating resumes or LinkedIn accounts to develop our professionalism. Not only is Keystone getting us ready for life after the club, but we're also doing service projects for the community to show that we care just as much about the community as the club does its families and members. I've been a part of the club for 7 years. It makes me proud to say that. I take advantage of every opportunity the club provides. I was chosen as a 2018 Learning Journey to Washington, D.C. Each year I've been selected as a member of the month, and every time I receive the certificate, there is always a new reason on why I was picked. The recognition shows how much I've grown into a person I want to be because of the club. They provide me with more than I can ask for. The club to me is not just another place to get my homework done or to hang out. It is like a home away from home where I know I am safe and welcomed by the members and staff members. My whole family has been active in the club. My 2 older siblings worked as staff members. My brother in the kitchen helping Jane prep meals, serve dinner, and clean up afterwards. And my sister in the art room as a program specialist, showing the kids how to be creative in their own ways. My younger brother is an active member that attends the club every day when he isn't wrestling at Horseman. He enjoys hanging out with his friends, working on homework, and field trips throughout our community. My parents attend family fun nights and the annual recognition dinner to see my brother and I receive Member of the Month. My parents appreciate everything the club has done for us. I don't think I can say anything that will express how truly grateful I am for the club and everything they have done for me and my family. As I look ahead to the next 2 years, my goal is to be chosen as the Club Youth of the Year and to go on to represent Wausau community as the National Youth of the Year for Boys and Girls Clubs of America. I want to share the impact the club has on me and my family. It is remarkable what the club will do to make a member feel welcome and provide them with a great extent of activities and support. The club will forever and always be a second home to me, and the members and the staff members are like one big community family. I am who I am today because of the club. They helped me show what potential I have, and I've used that to start the success of my future. If I could say one thing that you would get away to pick out from this speech, it would be thank you. Thank you for investing in the club, and thank you for giving me and my siblings and many other kids a safe and fun place to go after school. Thank you.
Questions from anybody? Thank you both for a great presentation. All right then, moving on for the consent agenda, starting with file number 19-1101 from the City Council, the minutes of the previous regular meeting from November 26th of this year, and ending with file number 19-1204 from the Wausau Waterworks, and that ordinance. I'll entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Mr. Nutting, second by Mr. Peckham.
You may begin voting. Motion passes unanimously.
And then on to resolutions and ordinances, and just to let everybody know, file number 01-0115 from the City Council, the resolution relocating District 9 and District 11 polling places from the National Guard Armory to the Mountain Terrace Senior Living, starting with the 2020 February spring primary election. I am withdrawing that. There is no vote needed. I have made that decision as far as I think it's just easier to stay at the Armory, that type of thing. I don't want to confuse residents and the costs associated involved. It's kind of a horse apiece, so that one is being withdrawn. But going back to file number 19-1203 for the mayor's appointments, we have a fair amount of them. 5 for the Room Tax Commission, you've got the appointments there, and then one for the Joint Review Board, that individual. You've got a biography on Mr. Tipple, and then we've also got 3 appointments for the Room Tax Commission with Tim Vandiak, Tom Weaver, and then our alderpersons, Mike Martins, Lisa Rasmussen, and Tom Neal. I'll entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Ms. Herbst. Do I have a second? By Mr. Gisselman.
You may begin voting. Motion carries unanimously.
File number 74-0620 from an ordinance of the Capital Improvement and Street Maintenance Committee, amend section 10.20.30.030, all-night parking prohibiting overnight parking during the winter months. Committee action approved 3-2. The fiscal impact will be none. Entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Ms. Rasmussen. Do I have a second by Mr. Nutting? And let's see. They're going to light up now, so. Mr. Neal, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't mean to be
We
first.
got to have one every meeting,
Okay.
come on.
Got to be the first one. Yeah, this kind of, I'm not on that committee, so I wasn't aware of this until late in the game there, and caught me off guard a bit. And Mr. Collin, I'm sorry, I didn't remember your last name, but thanks for coming up and speaking. I'm familiar, I think, with your very house, because I was over there looking at that block about 3 weeks ago because of some issues with parking on both sides of the street and some of that problems that's causing with, just getting through. And it's only exacerbated in the winter. And I understand the need, to clear the roads and whatnot, but, Colin's point is very well put in that at this point, finding a solution is going to be just about impossible. Mr. Nutting had an idea, maybe you bring it up, or should you allow me to, or? That, perhaps our prohibition against parking on yards can be overlooked, so that people can, plow off a space and park on their yard, which otherwise would be illegal. But then even now, with the amount of snow cover we have, that's a hard job to accomplish, and something you could have planned for ahead of time had you known. Same with the alley clearing, things like that. Yours, I think, Colin, is the only house on that 900 block that doesn't have street access to garages. And I remember walking by your house going, well, he's got to go, and that is not a good alley. That is like going off-roading back there, not during winter. So I think, I look at any given week during this time period from December 1st to the end of February, and you can go through a whole week and not see a flake of snow fall from the sky. And yet, cars aren't being able to park on the street because sometimes we have snow emergencies or heavy snowfall. The solution, to me, is not easy, and it certainly is not one I think we can cook up tonight and have it become doable in the city. So I would propose that we look at approaching this for next winter and try and be more creative this winter on how we're going to communicate with our neighborhoods, with our residents, and try and get cooperation on, clearing the street as much as we can, or parking on one side of the street or getting off the street, whatever, so the road crews can do their jobs. But I'll tell you, overhearing a driver tonight, just about took off is the wing of his plow because of narrow streets and cars parked out there, and they have to clear the streets. So this is a hard one. But I have to think about the residents and the hardship of finding at this late stage of the game some solution to avoiding ticketing. There was even talk of towing and whatnot. I know we're not really in a position to talk about that at this point. It's tough, but I'm going to vote against this tonight in hopes that we can come to a solution for next winter and try and plow through this winter.
Mrs. Rasmussen.
Thank you. Good pun there, Tom. We're going to plow through. I guess first, we had quite a discussion about this in CISM. We started to talk about some of these issues after the end of last winter, when we had 5 feet of snow in a month and the roads were getting narrower and narrower, and we had a half dozen snow emergencies along the way and gave out an awful lot of 300 plus of these snow emergency tickets. And so my question would be, and I know that there are some densely populated neighborhoods where people have more vehicles than they have driveway or garage space. My question would be, when a snow emergency is called, which could be, if we have a winter like last winter, it could be a half a dozen times, where do these people go then? Where do the cars go then? Then they're forced to essentially shift on the fly and come up with a solution immediately, which is not a whole lot different than the implementation of something like this, which is at least a consistent rule that for 4 hours a night, during that narrow span of the core of winter when the precipitation is the worst, that we've got a consistent set of policies, and that people don't have to constantly keep their head on a swivel waiting for that snow emergency, waiting for that social media bulletin to show up that, oh, tonight you can't park on the streets. And, if that person is otherwise committed and can't make those arrangements, they're in the same exact problem. And so I guess we had these same photos in the CISM committee, and I'll call your attention to the photos that are on the easels against the wall. There are 5 of them. All of these are photos that were taken by our plow drivers in District Number 7. The photo that is furthermost to the left, you'll see there's not snow on the ground yet. That photo is Strobridge Street between North First Avenue and Cherry Street, just west of Marathon Electric. That car that you see in that right-of-way is barely wide enough for our plow to go down when there is no snow. The snow plow, we verified in CISM with the wing on it, is 20 feet wide. That street is barely that. And so that car that you see in the photo never moves. Doesn't matter what season, it's never gone. and there's a half a dozen other streets like that in the same area. The photo on top, if we move to the right, that is North First Avenue in the 1600 block as you approach Boss Creek Road. There are no cars there, and the snow, with snow storage, has already narrowed. It's normally a wide street on a normal day. That snow, as it piles up, narrows that street to the point where if there were any vehicles parked there, the plow couldn't get through. The one beneath it, you'll see that there's, underneath all that snow up to the doors, there's a car under there. Where the windshield has been partially wiped off on the driver's side, it's wiped off because there's a $100 snow emergencies ticket on that car, and it remains in place. So that isn't working either. And that car, they'll be hard pressed to ever get that car out of there. The other two, the top photo is North First Ave pointed south in the 1200 block. And the significance of that photo is that there's cars parked on both sides. There's no snow or snow storage yet. But if you notice in the, toward the top of the photo, there's a car coming at the plow the opposite direction. Before we even get to winter, that plow can't navigate those streets. And now if we add snow, it's even worse. And so when our plow driver strikes a vehicle with that plow, their driving record is assessed points, and they receive a citation for that, and they're responsible for the damage to those vehicles. Right underneath it is North 2nd Avenue in the 1500 block, same exact situation. Part of the trouble we have with even odd parking is that people don't follow it, and we've not been as proactive as I feel we need to be on the enforcement because there just isn't the manpower to do it. And so, that said, I think that Wausau had this policy before. Before we went to this even odd year-round business, we had this restriction, Stevens Point still has it, where between those set hours during the winter, those cars just have to be off the road so that you can clean the street properly. Now, since we talked about this in CISM, my district has come out pretty strongly in favor of this policy, because you can't navigate the streets, you can't get them cleaned properly, people aren't getting plowed out. When you can't even get down a street, which is the situation you have with Strobridge and Eldred and some of those, the plow can't even get in there. Every house on that street can't get plowed out in a timely fashion because those cars don't move. And I think that happens in a lot of neighborhoods. And so for as much opposition as there is to this consistent set of rules, arrangements need to be made in a snow emergency anyway. And I can be sensitive to the fact that, we're now to winter and we have snow and people haven't had a chance to plan ahead or plow through. But at some point, we have to address this. We've kind of kicked this can down the road the last 3 winters. And so as an alternative, if we want to address this for next winter, like Alderman Neal suggested, then maybe what happens is if we pass this tonight, we stipulate that the implementation date is 12/1/2020. Maybe for the rest of this winter, they have to figure it out and use their snow emergencies effectively, but maybe then that gives people a 12-month span of time to figure out an alternative. But at some point, we've got to do something, because this even odd thing year-round for 10 years isn't working. What we have now is hundreds of cars that just are not off the road so they can clean properly, and it's just not working. And so every time it snows, I have a volume of complaints about people not getting plowed out because the plow can't get in. And I have another volume of complaints about cars that never move, so people's street can't get cleaned properly. And so that's how it is, at least on the northwest side. I know in the core of the city, it's different. Everybody gets a different set of complaints about navigation and their ability to get where they need to go. But, if we don't want to do this for this winter, and we want to, go with what we have for the rest of this year and allow people time to plan ahead, rather than vote it down, I would propose that we amend it to go into effect 12/1/2020.
Is that an amendment?
Yes.
I'll second the amendment.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Rasmussen, a second by Ms. Lawrence. We do have some other speakers, though. So we will, okay. Ms. Lawrence, go ahead.
That's
you're
where I
going?
was headed, so I'm
Okay.
good.
Mrs. Toe.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I have a lot to say. I don't know where to start because Tom did such a great job and so did Lisa. But I do sit in the CISM committee as a council member. And when this came up on the 3rd week of November, really 1 week in advance to the effective date of December 1, I also have Mr. Tucker's concern, who gave public comment earlier about the timing. I was concerned that we had just passed an ordinance for a parking ramp, and there was a lot of backlash and a lot of community response. And now we're going into reviewing another ordinance that's going to really impact the community, and they're really going to come out in full force and really, put us, to burn. And so kindly, Lisa, we all came up with a compromise that give us until December 10th to make sure that we have our neighborhood meetings and that we try to get to as many people as possible. Of course, we probably didn't get enough media traction, but I'm assuming some of us was able to solicit some feedback. Driving here this evening, I was sharing with Dave Nutting that as I drove down First Ave, where Dave lives on First Ave in District 3 there, I counted about 6 cars that were parked on their lawn. And it concerns me because I know that in my district, citizens have addressed me in the summertime about how people are utilizing their lawn to park 1, 2, sometimes even 3 cars along with their camper. Then I would have to turn around and have Officer Carr or Chief Bliven send somebody out, maybe a CRO, to go and check up on the concern that was sent to me. But what I want to share with all of you is that I agree timing is one of the priorities and concerns here. But I also want to talk about fairness. From my perspective, I don't want to punish citizens the other 90 days when we don't have snow. And I want to quote the city of Manitowoc. I did share my research with all of you via email. When you look at the city of Manitowoc, they're similar in size, similar in density as far as their single-family homes and some of their infrastructure there. And earlier this year, maybe not that early, maybe just a couple months ago, they decided that they were going to do a complete reinstatement of the no parking. They heard from the community. The community thought that it was a very antiquated way of, doing business, and they actually reversed the ordinance. They didn't feel that out of the 120 days between December and March, should we punish citizens to try to figure out where they're going to park their vehicles if they don't have the driveway space, or if they're not parking it on the lawn, if it's a zoning issue. They really offer the street parking. And I know, Lisa, you had shared that, well, when Eric Lindman or Chief Bliven declares a snow emergency every year, which they have that right, I think it's either one of you or both of you.
Actually, it's 3 of us.
Oh, and the mayor, excuse me.
Okay.
I want to count and say maybe last year was like between 4 to 10, okay? So I agree with you, Lisa. They know what to do in those 4 to 5, 10 instances. I think 10's on the high part. But we're talking about asking them in the other 90 days to figure out that situation. And I don't know how we can pass the buck along to the citizens to be able to figure that out. And that also comes to the timing. And I went a step further, and all of you received this email too. Thank you, Chief Bliven, for giving me the data analysis. I said, give me a total of how many citations the Wausau PD had written for odd and even parking, right, in those months, and he gave me 2018 and 2019 numbers. I also asked him, when we do declare a snow emergency, how many citations have we gone out there as law enforcement to enforce? And I just want to quote this for the record for all of you, that in December of 2018, for odd and even parking, for overnight parking, there was 120 citations, but 0 for snow emergencies. I don't know if in 2018 we declared how many snow emergencies, but I think that offering up this data for all of you paints a nice big picture. In January of 2019, earlier this year, there were 291 overnight parking and 0 citations for snow emergency parking. And then in February, if you remember, February we got dumped on. It was, freezing temperatures, lots of snow, school closings, and we did declare a few snow emergencies. And so in the month of February, we had 208 overnight parking citations, and we saw a massive increase of 366 snow emergency citations. I'm getting somewhere with all this information. I can only theorize that if this ordinance is reinstated, we will see that's no emergency, that at 366, if it's every single day for 120 days, we're going to see that citation level increase. That's $36,600 for just the month of February, for 366 cars at a $100 fine. I want to add more that, yes, we don't have the towing process today. We don't have the infrastructure to impound. And so there's more behaviors that we need to address. And I wish that we would have talked about this a year ago in preparation for December 1. I don't believe in creating contingencies, like voting on something to be effective for next year, December. I believe that we should have a plan in place. It should be communicated to citizens so that they understand that we're actually doing the due diligence and the work to make sure that we have a solid plan. Not creating exceptions to vote on something tonight so that we can somehow try to figure out in the next couple months. I just don't know if that's going to happen, but I'm not a fan of creating exceptions. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Mr. Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, as both Alder Tao and Alder Rasmussen mentioned in different ways about, reacting to a snow emergency and finding, a solution for that event. Sure, people can get creative and you might have to drive their car, across the other side of town and leave it at Aunt Betty's house and get a ride back home. But that's not a workable solution for, every night of the winter. I do believe, in the city of Milwaukee, I think, didn't they just pass also all cars off the street in winter? If you've ever been in Milwaukee and seen the street parking situation there, it's like, I think people probably kill each other for parking spaces there on the street. It's just solid cars. How those people are going to manage it, I have no clue. But hopefully they had a lot of time to, plan ahead. In spirit, I like the idea of, looking at this, putting it off until next winter, but I don't, as Mrs. Tao says, I don't think we need to vote on it tonight in terms of, with the caveat of, yeah, we'll accept it, but we won't implement it until next winter, because this might give us some time to look at it in a little bit more detail and maybe fine tune it and whatnot, because there isn't that immediate need to address it and vote on it right now to say, yeah, we'll do this next winter by the letter of this resolution. Yeah, we need to find ways to get cars off the road. We do need to clear those streets. I think that's where we need to go. We have to get away from the street parking thing in winter, even knowing that there's, as I said earlier, a whole lot of nights when there's no snow plowing to be done, but there's still sometimes work to be done. There's salt to be put down, there's sand to be put down. Maybe there's snow removal to be done. I don't know if they do that in the nighttime or just the daytime, but I'd like to sit back and look at this in more detail and deal with it for next winter. I don't think that we're giving people any time to find their personal solutions, and this is something that would take probably months to try to figure out how you're going to deal with it. So I still, I don't think I'll even vote for the amended resolution to wait until, to pass it now, but not implement it till next winter. I'd like to look at it in further detail, so that's where I stand.
Mr. Peckham?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will say that as a body, I think we are getting smarter, and I appreciate that the SISM committee realized that it would be a good idea not to ram this onto the agenda for the very first council meeting, and that a little time was given for everybody to consider it. And I would just say that being from District 1, I have the most congenial and polite citizens in the community. But we did touch a nerve. I asked on Facebook, and we all know that is scientifically valid. Anyway, I got almost as many comments as when we were considering allowing chickens in our community. There were 104, there were a lot of repeats. But when it all shook out, about 70% of the people said no. And I do think that the proposed amendment to delay this until next year is smart. We certainly can't, I don't think we can implement this in December. But maybe we've raised the community consciousness to the point where we know, maybe the community should know, that we're going to look at parking behavior this winter, and we're going to review it in April or May. And if we continue to have the problems we have, and the plow drivers for whom a very good case was made during the CISM meeting, according to the minutes that I read, we still have the problem. I think in the spring, we would be justified in instituting a ban like has been proposed, but I don't think we should do it immediately, and I'm willing to give the community a chance to kind of, if we say, if things don't get better, it's going to be 120 days, no parking on the street. Do you want that or not? And so I'd kind of go that direction. Thank you.
Ms. McElhaney?
Thank you. I was one that voted no, and I want to explain to the full council. I've driven through a snowplow route, and so I've done that as a ride-along, and I understand their difficulty. The plows are getting bigger. I mean, I think that's part of the problem. We used to have plows that weren't as big as a road, and now we do. You know, they have problems with that. They have problems with cars, garbage cans, you know, in the road. There's a lot of obstacles. But here was my issue, is that I think in a perfect world, yes, we should do this. But my issue is, I think that our city has some contradicting things that are going on. We are allowing, and I kept asking, what does our zoning say? We're allowing these apartments or these older houses, especially in the middle of the city here, the older section that were one big house are now 4 apartments with 1 parking spot. It was brought to our attention that the city recently okayed another development that has on-street parking only. How can we say, okay, you can do this, and now, nope, you don't have a parking space anymore in the winter? We have to be consistent in our policies, and I think this is inconsistent. I so agree that we needed to start this work well before. And if we are going to a goal of no parking in the winter, we need to get the landlord association. And we're going to have to let off some, bring back, take back a little bit of the ordinances that allow maybe some parking surfaces to be made in with those big places, so they have parking spaces off the road. And we're gonna have to look at about alley parking. We're gonna have to look at a lot of different things than telling people, no parking, do what you can. It didn't get by me that both DPW and the police department during our CISM meeting stated they field tons of calls during snow emergencies. People who want to do the right thing and say, where can I park? What can I do? And they come back, don't know. I mean, that's the things we have to think of, then what? We have to that's kind of our jobs, is to look and see and do some planning. Okay, if this is happening and these people have only on-street parking because we said it was okay, then what? Because there are people, I doubt those 330 people felt, I'll just get a $100 ticket. I can't imagine that. So I'm not going to vote for this until we do the work before and have consistent policies, and then we can decide that. but I feel like sometimes we do things backwards. We make the ordinance and then we talk about, well, then we're going to go back and do the work. We're going to go back and talk to the landlords and get some, we need to do that first because we can't have people like Mr. Wolf and people that have called me from the middle of the city saying, I have no place to go and I can't afford a $100 ticket. What do I do? So I hope we do. I mean, I think it's a good thing to get the roads cleared and give them clear access, but I think we need to do the work first.
Ms. Lawrence?
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me, I supported this in the committee, and I think postponing this is a good idea with the concept that we would have staff flesh out some of those things you're addressing in terms of just unavailable parking. And I believe our previous, excuse me, coming down with a cold, our previous zoning, which we now have overcome, I guess, required certain off-street parking for developments. But it doesn't necessarily tell the city or the landlord who's going to be visiting, how many people are going to be living there. So that's called real life. We all face that sometime or another. But I think if we adopt this, then we'll know where we're going. We can have staff, police department, public works, work out. Towing, I think, would be the only answer for someone like that. I mean, if you need an ambulance when the snow is as high as your window, you would love to have an ordinance like this so that the emergency vehicles can get through, which is really the whole point of this. It isn't so much as having nice and clean streets, it's to get fire, ambulance, and police through when they need to. So I'm very supportive of this. I'm supportive of towing situations like that where they sit there all winter. And maybe we can feel sorry for them if they can't afford to get their car fixed, but it just doesn't belong on the street while they're figuring out how to handle that. So again, I'm supporting the amendment to the motion.
Mr. Peckham?
Turn the switch on. I apologize for not bringing this up earlier, but perhaps we could have Rick Molnetsky stroll up toward the microphone and talk a little bit about one of the things that is in this mix of challenges is the access of people in residential neighborhoods to their alley access only parking. And we're not parking alleys, we're not plowing alleys now. If this would pass, would we begin parking alleys? Is that even possible?
That would be a
Educate
huge
us a little.
undertaking. We have not, in my 36 years here, had any alleys that we plow. We do plow 3 alleys, and I want to qualify, but they are landlocked. And we talk about emergency services need to get there. That's why we plow one off of Bella Street and then one off of Prospect and one off of Mary Street. They are the only access they have, and a lot of people say, well, that's my only access to that in the alley. Well, that's not the case, because what happens is they don't have any right-of-way that adjacents the street. They are landlocked behind another property that's on a street. So those are the only 3 that we've done since I've been here. I know that's an inconvenience, and a lot of times people rent a place or buy a place and are not informed that we don't in the interim, and then we get about 15, 20 calls every early winter about why we don't, and it's just been a policy that we haven't.
Is there any way to organize the people who live there to do it?
Well, that's, and that was I had lived on Thomas Street in the 700 block for a number of years, and I basically either I did it or it didn't get done. And I was one of the only access or needed that access for parking. So I guess I took the initiative. I bought a snow blower and I had to do it. So it is a cooperative thing. I know there's a number of alleys that get a cooperative agreement with landowners, and they go together and they pay for a service to do that. I know that that is the case in some places in town. But the logistics of the miles and miles of alleys that we have, we would have to put so much more staff on. The alleys are full of brush, garages are tight, some of them are real tight, If you push all the snow to one side, you'd have to almost have a V-plow to give equal to each side. Some of the alleys are probably not even, like you say, passable. Some are grass-centered, some are blacktop, some are grass-centered. So we have like 4 different situations of what we have in the infrastructure.
Mrs. Tao.
I just want to add that there are certain things that we could do tonight. I know for a fact that for myself, I will be voting no on the amendment and no on the original resolution. I think that the CISM committee could commission any kind of research or full study or look at what the outcomes are going to be for this 2019-2020 winter season. I think at that point, I think Elder Packham had talked about how, maybe looking at it in April, May, and see where we land, and really taking the time to build the plan and looking at all the possible, opportunities and risk and costs that's involved, not only to our taxpayers, but really to the city as well, too. And so I just want to share that commission could be done for staff to really take a look at next year. I just don't believe that voting tonight is the best route for us right now. Thanks.
Mrs. Rasmussen.
Thank you. The whole point, the whole reason I offered up the idea of a delayed implementation, I think, is because it establishes a framework, not only for residents to plan for the implementation of the ordinance, it gives them a year to line up whatever alternatives they're going to seek, if they're going to collaborate as neighbors to plow alleys or whatever that is. It gives a long time frame for that to happen. But it also establishes a finite period for which the research that Mary and Becky have asked for can happen. So if we want ideas from engineering as far as alternatives, and we want to network with landlords and start to allow landlords to demolish, decrepit garages and pave the area where they used to be to allow their residents more off-street parking. There was a time where the city refused to allow a landlord to do that, so the ugly garage remained and the tenants remained in the street. And there was one landlord who wanted to do it and was told no. And so if we want to be friendlier to those discussions, that I think happens between inspections, engineering, the CISM committee, maybe the plan commission, but there needs to be a kind of a finite start and end to that discussion timeframe, or it won't get done. And I think sometimes what happens is that the can gets kicked down the road and go, well, maybe we'll talk about that in April, maybe July. Well, before we know it, it's winter again. And I think that's kind of the treadmill that we've been on is, gee, we really need to do something to clean the roads better. And DPW has really been having a hard time. We've been having that discussion in neighborhoods and in the committee for 3 or 4 years. And so, if we want to do a delayed implementation, it really does frame up that work. And, there's going to need to be solutions prior to implementation to the extent that we can create them or to the extent that the public can adapt. But we know that that date is coming on the horizon, and we know when it is, and it's a set date when compliance needs to happen, and it's not now. It's not this winter. But I think that makes sense. Now, if the council is not amenable to a delayed implementation, and you want to see a whole bunch of research that brings us to kind of the same point next fall, we could refer this matter back to CISM and allow that to happen, but I don't know that we're going to come back in any different place. We either allow parking or we don't. And the restriction in this ordinance is so narrow. It's 4 hours a night during the height of the snow season, and the rest of the year is wide open. Purposely, because the only time they need it is during the snow season. So we went with this as restrictively as we could possibly make it to minimize the inconvenience, and that still doesn't seem to be enough. So I'm okay with referring it back to do the back work if you want it done, but I don't know that we're going to come back in a different spot than we're in tonight. And I think if we were to enact it with a delayed implementation, everyone knows the date at which the rubber meets the road. And I think that would stimulate all of that activity that people want to see happen.
Mr. Nutting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Though I don't know how this vote will go, I do know that we could immediately provide relief, parking relief, by suspending the no parking on the grass during this period of time, too. So right away, somebody with a team of guys could shovel out a spot and get them off the street and park behind the house or along the side of the house or in front of the house for that matter. The person could, multiple people could be off the street and we'd suspend that time and give immediate parking relief. And if this, I was going to offer that as a potential amendment, if this was to pass, that to give that opportunity. I'm in favor of no parking for our plows to have that ability and safety, but I'm also in favor of suspending this or proposing this to wait a year while we study it all. So I'm kind of manic about what to do here, but they're all good options. They all have their validity, and I appreciate Alder Tau's research on this, and I appreciate what the CISM has also researched on this too. But certainly we're going to get our homework done, but right now we could provide immediate relief by suspending that. And I don't know what it would take to do that, but we should give our residents the opportunity right now, if they have the need, and have done so in the past, and some are doing right now, parking off-street on the grass, which is frozen. It's not going to get all rutted up, and they can get off of that by March 1st and be on the street as this will allow. Thank you.
Mrs. Tao.
Well, my biggest concern about voting tonight is that, with the news media here, we're probably going to gain more traction in the community, understanding that there's this snow ordinance of no parking that either is going to move forward or it's not tonight. My concern is that you now open the opportunity for our staff to have to field inquiries about, I heard about this no parking. And then you have an influx in calls. Our staff don't have direction on what do you do if example A occurs. They don't know how to provide guidance and direction because we haven't come up with a plan. And so we're creating more work for city staff. And I think they're already stretched thin today, right? So I would love it if we already had a plan that we've already vetted and that we're ready to propose it. But yet, again, we're going into this, everyone's going to hear about it after tonight, and guess who's going to get the calls or the emails? The mayor, city staff, and they're going to say, we don't really have a plan yet, folks. I don't know how to answer that. And I think that's a big concern, that we're putting the weight of that work, of the inquiry, to our city staff to field those kind of conversations from citizens. Thank you.
Mr. Peckham.
I think we're moving toward a solution here. I think the best thing would be, and I make a motion to this effect, that we refer the matter back to CISM with instructions to bring it back to us in May, at which time whoever's on the council would decide whether or not we want a overnight parking ban as proposed for those 3 months. So my motion is to refer back to CISM with instructions to bring it back in May, the community having had time to consider all this.
Does somebody want to second that? We've already got several motions on the floor, so I want to make sure that I'm asking our city attorney just for clarification.
If we're heading toward a refer back, I'll withdraw the motion to approve. That should wipe it all out. And we can take a new motion to refer back to CISM if that's what the council wants to do.
Ms. Lawrence, are you in agreement with that? Okay, we'll rescind that one then.
But we'd refer it back with the directive to CISM that they come with some kind of a plan and a proposed solution by June,
Okay,
so that we have plenty of time.
and I'll take a second by Mr. Neal.
Original thinking was May, I think
Well, the new
earlier.
council sits at the end
Sits
of
at the
April.
end of
I mean, you
April.
got to at least let people get assigned to the committee and get up to speed, I
Okay,
think.
I'm good with that. June is fine.
And who was the second?
Mr. Neal. Ms. Herbst.
My only comment is I'm in favor of waiting till next year, April, May, to go through this and come up with a plan. But right now, I really feel that we should stick with the odd, even ordinance just the way it is right now. Why should we go and ban the people right now and tell them, hey, you can't park on the street whatsoever. I just think leave it as it is this year, like it's been the last winters. We will make the change come 2020. Thank you.
Mr. Nutting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the request to refer back to CISM. If I might offer the friendly amendment to that, that we would suspend the prohibition of parking on the grass or other unpaved surfaces during this period of time to provide relief and opportunities for residents to get the cars off the street when there's a snow emergency. They have no place. Where can I go? Put it on the lawn somewhere. Figure it out. Get it off the street so we can plow. That's my friendly amendment to moving it back to CISM, if that is Robert's Rules of Order possible.
Well, I'm wondering about the germaneness of that amendment to the original resolution and whether or not that would comply with the open meetings law and the description of what's going to be talked about at tonight's meeting. And that's somewhat far afield than discussion on amending our overnight parking ordinance. Now you're going to suspend enforcement of a zoning ordinance in effect, which I'm not commenting on that being a bad idea, but it's so far afield, I think, from the original resolution that I'm not sure it's germane. It would be my suggestion, unless the council overrules me, that that idea be brought back on another agenda for the council to consider.
Well, it's sort of like a snow emergency scenario here. This is going to open up an opportunity, and I just say figure out a way to make it happen. I don't know how to do it, but figure out a way.
I would follow our city attorney's advice, as always. And Mr. Peckham, and I'm hoping that we have discussion coming up to the end on this.
Hopefully end it. I'm wondering if Chief Bliven could tell us if we have a snow emergency, if you can come up if you want, otherwise just give us a thumbs up or down. But if we have a snow emergency, officers driving down the street and they see somebody who is technically illegally parked on their lawn during that snow emergency, does the officer whip out his or her ticket book?
They don't do it. Inspections does.
It's just something we need to read about.
I don't feel comfortable giving a thumbs up or thumbs down on that question. I think, if there's an ordinance that prohibits parking on the lawn, the potential is it gets enforced because most of you have gotten complaints about people parking on the lawn and that sort of thing and how that impacts neighbors. So I guess the answer is it depends. Do we have a complaint from a neighbor? If we're doing general snow emergency enforcement, you're probably not going to have to worry about that because we'll have other priorities at that point in time, but that doesn't mean that somebody's not going to get ticketed at some point if we have an ordinance on the books. So, I would advise that if you want people not to park on the lawns, then we have an ordinance prohibiting that. If you want to allow that, then we change the ordinance and we allow it during specific time periods.
Thank you.
Mrs. Rasmussen?
Thank you. I think most of that enforcement for vehicle parked in the wrong place or vehicle parked in a non-paved area or whatever takes place more so in the inspections department. That seems to be where the letters are all coming out of. And so, in that ordinance, if we wanted to, amend those regulations to allow for that type of use during that season, assuming that something like this would pass, if it's a zoning thing, it probably would have to come out of the Plan Commission and a discussion would have to start there about allowing that type of exception during certain months of the year. I think it would be a separate agenda item and a separate committee action that would need to happen. I mean, we could certainly keep it on the radar, but I don't know that it's necessarily a police enforcement problem. I think the people that are getting letters that are mad about having to move all that stuff, those letters are coming from inspections.
Okay, this vote is going to be to refer the ordinance back to CISM to bring a plan back by June. You may begin voting. And that motion carries unanimously.
Moving on to file number 15-0409, a resolution of the Finance Committee approving the Youth Development Programs contract with the Boys and Girls Club of the Wausau Area Incorporated. Committee action approved 4-1. The fiscal impact will be $25,000. Entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Mrs. Rasmussen, second by Mr. Gisselman.
You may begin voting. And that motion passes 9-2.
File number 15-0409, a resolution of the Finance Committee approving the Peer Court Program contract with the Boys and Girls Club of the Wausau Area Incorporated. Committee action approved 5-0. The fiscal impact will be $23,000. Entertain a motion to accept. Mr. Nutting, do I have a second? By Mr. Neal.
You may begin voting. Motion passes unanimously.
Coming up next, suspending the Rule 1D, transmission of committee business to council for the items marked pending committee action. A two-third vote will be required. Entertain a motion to accept that. Motion by Mr. Neal. Do I have a second? By Ms. Rasmussen.
You may begin voting. Motion passes unanimously.
File number 19-1205, a resolution of the Finance Committee approving the renewal of the license agreement with Windstream KDL Limited Partnership. Committee action approved 5-0. The fiscal impact, a revenue of $2,721.42, an increase in 3% annually. Entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Mr. Nutting, second by Mr. Gisselman.
Okay, begin voting. Oops, I missed two. That motion did pass unanimously.
File number 97-0404, a resolution of the Finance Committee approving the Second Amendment to Purchase and Development Agreement with AGR Properties / Wausau Chemical. Committee action approved 5-0. The fiscal impact will be none. Entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Ms. Herbst. Do I have a second by Mr. Martins?
You may begin voting. Motion passes unanimously.
And file number 16-0309, a resolution of the Finance Committee approving the city's waiver of first right of refusal to purchase property at 7811 Stewart Avenue from PI of Schofield Incorporated to STS, consent to the assigned leases thereof, and the assignment of the development agreement between PI of Schofield Incorporated and Wausau Coded Enterprises 3, a limited partnership. Committee action approved 5-0. The fiscal impact will be none. Entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Ms. Lawrence, second by Mr. Smith.
You may begin voting. Motion passes unanimously.
And before we adjourn for the evening, I always like to have folks come forward if they'd like to talk about anything on tonight's agenda or anything else going on in the city of Wausau. Now's your chance. Would anybody like to come forward for any public comment? Deputy Chief Matt Barnes, the slugger himself, so.
I just want to take this opportunity, Mayor, to thank you for being a good sport. It's helped paint Wausau in a better light and address a really negative article. And you were a great target, and I was asked by my priest last Sunday. He said, "I didn't know you had such a great arm, Matt." And I said, "Father, I'm convinced this was divine intervention in order for this to go viral, that God took over my hand and drilled you in the back of the head. So thank you."
You know, and on a positive note, the city of Wausau, believe it or not, we do like to have fun. There is some erroneous, how do I put this respectfully and diplomatically, contrived or created news stories last week in some of the national media stating about our snowball ordinance that's been in effect since 1962. For the record, I did not put it in place. I was born in 1966. But a lot of it was just really horrible, and I feel bad for city staff because unfortunately myself and city staff did get beat up from nationwide calls from throughout the United States, some threatening, which is kind of a shame, especially for an incident that just really did not happen. That said, I'm very pleased with Chief Bliven and Deputy Chief Barnes. We got together and said, you know, let's create this into something fun and positive, to show that we have a sense of humor, but also to get our point across to the national media. Please check your facts before you report. So thank you to the Wausau Police, and Matt, I will be looking for you, so. And with that, would anybody
Mayor,
else like to come forward?
Mayor,
Yes.
it's only a matter of time until they get wind of the fact that we have also outlawed rhinoceros in
Unfortunately,
captivity here, so.
You know, it's a
that one's
litigation,
coming.
it's a litigation-happy society. You'd like to think common sense would follow through, but you got to cover everything. So be it. Would anybody else like to come forward and speak on a topic? And one more time, would anybody like to come forward? All right, then I'll entertain a motion for all of us to adjourn. Oh, boy, Dawn Herbst put her hand up real quick. I have a second by Mr. Smith. All those in favor of
Begin
adjourning?
voting.
Vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, everybody, for a great night and a great meeting. Take care. And Merry Christmas to all of you.